Hello everyone, hello and welcome to an exclusive early look at the Ruby Sea, one of the new zones to be introduced with the upcoming Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood. I had the privilege of getting to sit down with an early build of the game a few weeks ago in San Francisco, and having spent some time thoroughly exploring this new area, today I'm going to give you guys an exclusive tour. Now that said, all of this footage is of course of a build of the game still in development and does not necessarily represent the final product. There are also 0 quests in this build aside from fates and very little dialogue that I can share with you, so we'll have to speculate a lot based on what we see. There are also limits on how much unedited footage I can show you, and so there will be some fast forwarding and transitions throughout, but all the same, this zone really blew me away, so I'm excited to show you all around. We are starting by the Aetherite in Mizz, one of a number of settlements nestled at the very bottom of the Ruby Sea. This one is home to a friendly faction of the Kojin, the turtle-like beast tribe native to these parts. It is unclear whether these bubbles are naturally occurring or magically produced, but it is curious to note that the maritime flora and coral formations continue to grow, presumably because of the still abundant water-aspected ambient ether. The Kojin here keep an assortment of ornate and colourful chests and pots, no doubt containing artifacts that they associate with their kami. Leaving the Kojin village and travelling just a short way southwest, we find an even more curious settlement, this one populated by a tribe of the pale-skinned Aura Rayan. We learn that this place is called Sui-no-sato, and that it was established long ago by Rayan seeking refuge from their war-ravaged homeland. These Rayan are ruled by the elusive Ruby Princess from Shisui of the Violet Tides, a temple and palace located in the depths of the Turquoise Trench further south. Given that it is the setting of the dungeon we were able to trial as part of the media tour, we will be able to have a closer look at Shisui of the Violet Tides very soon. But in the village we find Rayan, young and old, priestesses, and evidence of a fruitful fishing industry. Back in the watery depths we find an old shipwreck, the Adventure. While the sea is alive with colourful coral, drifting schools of fish, beautiful particle effects, and even large crystal clusters as we get deeper, parts of the map do definitely feel like they have large, negative spaces. Many of these will no doubt be compensated with gathering nodes and such, but travelling through the water you definitely feel the absence of mobs and other more fluid elements quite keenly. Personally, however, I find this an extremely refreshing and calming change of pace. And the zone is so beautiful that I didn't mind long stretches of just drifting through emptiness. At the top of the Turquoise Trench we find a fun Easter egg, and although there is still more to see under the sea, I decided at this point to have a look at the world above. The Ruby Sea is, after all, effectively 2 zones on one map, both very different and both huge. We emerged by an active volcano in the south called Hell's Lid, and trailed east to where the tide line of the cooling magma ends and gives way to a ramshackle outpost called Sakazuki. It is here that we first find a new faction called the Confederacy, which seems to control the small islands dotting the coast between Hingashi and Othard. From what I've been able to gather, they appear to be a very young fledgling nation of various peoples that have fled the mainland and survive off the coast by collecting a tax from passing merchant vessels, which they call the Ruby Tithe. Sakazuki, or the Goblet, is where the Confederacy was first established and toasted their free and united future. The next island north is called Beko, wild and occupied by feral wavekin. There is a cave here marked with symbols of the Kojin, but for some reason here the entrance seems to only work one way for now, so I thought it was inaccessible until I came up into the cave through an underwater cavern in Mizz a little later. Heading further north, I take a moment to crane my neck back to admire the infamous Jenga Tower, or Heaven on High as the locals call it, which literally has no peak. It does not matter from where on the map you observe it, it extends well out of sight, even on a clear day and well beyond the heights to which we can fly in this area, but we'll take a closer look at it soon. Inside the hollow of Shoal Rock, we discover a pool which leads into a tunnel back under the sea nearby Mizz. On the eastern side of Shoal Rock, another Confederacy outpost built across large coral shelves called the Coral Banquet. This platform looks curiously like a PvP arena to me. I can't help but wonder at its function. A fate in the shadow of the Jenga Tower tells us that these frightening creatures are actually Ashkin, undead spirits of corpses that have been thrown from the cliffs as punishment for evil deeds. It's possible that they're just wavekin, of course, and that local superstition has tried to account for their disquieting appearance. Speaking of local superstition, the Confederacy have set up their primary settlement and headquarters on Okoro at the base of the Jenga Tower, because their potential adversaries are evidently much too wary to approach this holy ground, which they believe to have been built by their ancient kami. Unlike their grand neighbor Kugane, Onokoro is built almost entirely of unsealed timber, its population mostly Midlander with a smattering of Rogadan and Aura. Along the East Othard coastline, we find a number of cruel-looking Borfborfs, and a curious little bay with a solitary tree named the 10,000-Year Pine. From what we know of Far Eastern mythology, this is probably considered a kami of some significance. Following the coastline west, we pass the entrance to the Azim Steppe and a final Confederacy outpost named Isari. South of here, hidden between the crags of the Isle of Zeki, is another and not so friendly community of Red Kojin, no doubt the adherents of Susano. Having charted the rest of the Ruby Sea's landmasses, we dive into a pool at the center of Zeki, appropriately named the Dive, and it takes us back under the sea via a short tunnel not far from the Anemone Gardens, another small cave occupied by Umemi and, naturally, Anemone. Another noteworthy cave down here is simply called Exile, perhaps the refuge of exiled Kojin. I did find a B-rank Kojin mark in here and took it as an opportunity to test out Dragoon at level 70. Having quenched my thirst for turtle blood, we'll return to Tamamizu and follow the friendlier Kojin's tunnel back to the surface, thus concluding our tour of the expansive and beautiful Ruby Sea. So what do you think? Does it bother you to see a far sparser density of enemies in this zone, both above and below the water, compared to any of those that we have seen in A Realm Reborn or Heaven's Ward? Or, like me, do you find the uniqueness of the Ruby Sea enticing and refreshing? I'm certainly excited to get back into this zone once it's been populated with quests, dialogue, leaves and sightseeing logs and gathering and who knows what else, and I really hope that you are too. We're still yet to explore the peaks of Giribanya or Shisui of the Violet Tides, which we will be doing over the next few days, so do please subscribe if you don't want to miss those, but until then, I'm Ethys, and thank you so much for watching.